Good morning. Good morning, everyone. And it's good to see you all here today. So, um, last week we were continuing our discussion of the Lotus Sutra, the Dharma Flower Sutra. And we were discussing the chapter entitled Devadatta. And as you'll recall, Devadatta was sort of the evil monk in Buddha's time who, within the text of the Lotus Sutra, gains reassurance that he will be a Buddha in the future, although it may take a long, long time, many eons. But even Devadatta will come to awakening eventually. So the last half of that chapter is kind of strange. It's about the Naga princess, the dragon princess, and we'll discuss that. But we're going to need a little background, I think, for those of you who may not be familiar with Nagas, as to what a Naga is, and the symbolism of Nagas. So, the Nagas are from the pre-Buddhist Indian folklore, mythology, and they are snake-like deities who are protective. They're strong and they're protective. They generally have a positive aspect to them. They're and as with many of the pre-Buddhist mythologies in India, they got carried over into the Buddhist tradition. And the image I have here is of Mukalinda, which is the Naga king protecting the Buddha. Has many kind of what look like serpent heads. It's a little hard to make out what's going on. But this is in a temple or wat in Chiang Mai, which actually Carol and I had the opportunity to see. The Naga comes from, well, our word snake is distantly related to the word Naga. And oftentimes in Indian mythology, the Naga would be depicted as half person, half human, half snake. So there would be the upper torso of a human, and then there would be the rest of the body would be snake-like or serpent-like. And as I say, they were interpreted as protective deities. So when Buddhism came to China, they didn't really have a word for, they didn't have a character, a Chinese character for Naga, because that wasn't part of their folklore. But a very deep part of their folklore was that of the dragon. So they just used the dragon character to, instead of whenever Naga came up in the scriptures. And the dragon in Chinese folklore is also a positive figure. It symbolizes strength and good fortune. It is, in a way, protective as well. And that can be confusing for Westerners because in our folklore, the dragon is usually a demon or a beast, something that needs to be killed by a hero. In this case, Saint George killing the man-eating dragon. So dragons are universally known as strong creatures, but in the East they tend to be more of a positive figure, something that is favorable, and whereas in the West they are more of a threat. So I think that clarification helps a little bit when we start talking about the section of the Lotus Sutra discussing the Naga princess. So that part of the chapter begins with, remember there was the Buddha abundant treasure who arose out of the earth in a stupa, and then the Buddha opened the stupa and joined abundant treasure Buddha on the seat there in the stupa, and that's where we take things up here. They're sitting side by side, and abundant treasure's attendant, whose name is accumulated wisdom, is I guess getting a little impatient with all this and wants to go home, wants to go back to where abundant treasure came from. But Shakyamuni Buddha, our Buddha, says, wait, not so fast. I'd like you to meet Manjushri. And Manjushri is a bodhisattva, usually associated with wisdom. And the Buddha wanted accumulated wisdom to meet the bodhisattva of wisdom, Manjushri. So the Buddha called Manjushri to come to where they were on Vulture's Peak there. Manjushri was down in the realm of the Nagas, and he was teaching, as it turns out, the Lotus Sutra to people in that realm, or to beings in that realm, the Nagas in that realm, and he was a guest of Sagara, the king of the Nagas. So Manjushri dutifully left his post there and came to Vulture's Peak and joined the group. And gets to meet accumulated wisdom. And that's where I'll take up with a little bit of the reading here. Then Manjushri, sitting on 1,000-petaled lotus flower, as large as a carriage wheel, accompanied by bodhisattvas who had come with him, also sitting on treasured lotus flowers, emerged naturally from the palace of Sagara Dragon King in the great ocean. They live in the water, some of them anyway. Suspended in the air, he went to Holy Eagle Peak, or Vulture's Peak as it's sometimes translated, got down from the lotus flower, went before the Buddha, and reverently prostrated himself at the feet of the two world-honored ones, Abundant Treasure and our Shakyamuni. When he had expressed his respect, he went over to Accumulated Wisdom, and after they had exchanged greetings, they withdrew and sat to one side. Accumulated Wisdom, Bodhisattva, asked Manjushri, when you were in the Dragon Palace, how many beings did you convert? When you were in the Dragon Palace, how many beings did you convert? It's sort of shop talk among bodhisattvas, because bodhisattvas are dedicated to freeing all beings. That's part of the vow. So accumulated wisdom was wanting to know how many beings that Manjushri had liberated. In this translation, which we're using Gene Reeves' translation predominantly, he says converted. I always get a little uncomfortable when that with that translation, because I think in Buddhism, conversion can easily be confused with what we're more familiar with here in the West. When we talk about conversion, we talk about adopting a belief system for the purpose of salvation. What he's talking about here is more liberation, more gaining the eye of the Buddha in a way. Maybe transformation might be a different word that could be used if conversion bothers you in any way. So Manjushri goes on to say that he was able to free many, many beings in the land of the Nagas. And so accumulated wisdom has another question here. He says, accumulated wisdom, Bodhisattva asked Manjushri, this sutra is very profound, fine, and wonderful, the jewel of all the sutras, a rare thing in the world. Is there any living being who, diligently and devotedly practicing this sutra, can quickly become a Buddha? Manjushri replied, well, there is the daughter of the Dragon King Sagara, just 8 years old. She is wise and has sharp faculties and is well acquainted with the faculties and actions of living beings. She has mastered incantations. She has been able to receive and embrace all the profound inner core treasures preached by the Buddhas. She has entered deeply into meditation and gained an understanding of all things. Within a moment, she aspired to become awakened and taught this stage and reached the stage of never backsliding. Her eloquence knows no bounds. She has compassion for all the living, as if they were her own children. She is full of blessings, and the thoughts of her mind and the explanations from her mouth are both subtle and great, compassionate and respectful of others, kind and gentle. She is able to attain awakening. So this 8-year-old dragon girl, Naga, is able to attain awakening, according to Manjushri. And rather quickly, too, at a young age. Well, accumulated wisdom expresses some skepticism about this. I mean, look at all of the we've been reading previously in the Lotus Sutra about all of the many eons and lifetimes that the Buddha spent in becoming the Buddha, and having to go through so many hardships and difficulties, persisting over these vast expanses of time. And then why can this 8-year-old girl attain an awakening? It didn't seem possible. And then to support this skepticism, Shariputra appears. Shariputra is one of the followers of the Buddha, who is known for his ardent practice of the precepts. And Shariputra, likewise, is skeptical and expresses it in this way. Then Shariputra said to the dragon girl, because the dragon girl appeared, I forgot to mention that, the dragon girl comes up as an example from the land of the Nagas. The dragon girl appears, and Shariputra questions her. He says, "You think that in no time at all you will attain the unexcelled way. This is hard to believe. Why? Because the body of a woman is filthy and impure, not a vessel for the Dharma. How could you attain unexcelled awakening? The Buddha way is long and extensive. Only after innumerable eons of enduring hardship, accumulating good works, and thoroughly carrying out all the practices can it be reached. Moreover, a woman's body has 5 hindrances. First, she cannot become a king of a Brahma heaven. Second, she cannot become King Indra. Third, she cannot become a devil king. Fourth, she cannot become a wheel-turning saintly king. And fifth, she cannot have the body of a Buddha. How then can you, in a woman's body, so quickly become a Buddha?" The dragon girl responds. The dragon girl took a precious jewel that she had with her, worth as much as 3,000 great thousandfold worlds, and presented it to the Buddha. The Buddha immediately accepted it. The dragon girl then said to accumulated wisdom Bodhisattva and the Venerable Shariputra, "I presented my precious jewel, and the world-honored one accepted it. Was that done quickly?" "Most quickly," they answered. The daughter told them, "Use your holy powers to watch me become a Buddha, even more quickly than that." Then the entire congregation saw the dragon girl instantly transformed into a male, take up bodhisattva practice, and immediately go to the world named Spotless in the southern region, where, sitting on a precious lotus blossom, she attained impartial, proper awakening. With the 32 characteristics and 80 different attractive features, she proclaimed the wonderful Dharma to all living beings everywhere in the universe. These 32 characteristics and 80 different attractive features are supposedly physical features of the Buddha that are a part of the early Buddhist teaching in the canon. So she attained acquired all of those, and was able to teach the Dharma throughout the universe. And the chapter ends, accumulated wisdom, Bodhisattva and Shariputra, and the whole congregation silently believed and accepted this. So, the dragon girl becomes a Buddha at 8 years of age. So this is one of the best known stories in the Lotus Sutra, and it enlarges on this theme that we've been visiting of inclusiveness, that all beings are capable of Buddhahood, and in fact are destined for Buddhahood. And it need not take many, many eons. All the other places in the Lotus Sutra where they talk about realizing Buddhahood, it seems to take many, many eons, a long, long time, arduous. But in this case, it's just like that, just snap of a fingers. So, one of the texts that we studied a while back was called Ceasing of Notions. Ceasing of Notions. Notions of ageism, thinking that people of one age or another are capable or incapable of various things. Ceasing of speciesism, because this was not only it was an 8-year-old, it was a non-human. It's a different species, capable or incapable of various things. And there are many other notions that we carry around that we have incorporated from our culture, either knowingly or unknowingly. Racism, thinking that people of one race or one ethnic origin or another are capable or incapable of certain things. Nationalism, thinking that some people from some nations are extraordinary in some way, capable or incapable of certain things. The story of the Dragon Princess is a narrative way, sort of a whimsical, fictional way of reinforcing the point that these are notions, not something fixed, not something that necessarily relates to any kind of reality whatsoever. That surprising things happen, and that an 8-year-old can be a Buddha. And it may not take many, many, many years of arduous practice for that to happen. There can be a sudden transformation. And it makes you wonder and makes me think about how other people have been Buddhas for me at times, suddenly. How perhaps, either knowingly or unknowingly, I may have been a Buddha for somebody else. That all beings have the capability to be a Buddha. And it may arise just like that. One thing that is fairly constant among all of these transformations is an encounter of some sort. Usually a person-to-person encounter, although it could be through reading a book, or perhaps an author can have this effect. But most often it's through some sort of interpersonal encounter. And one person can serve the role during that encounter of a Buddha. And the other person can have their view transformed. Just like that. So a couple things about this section of the chapter. One is the inclusiveness. the fact that all beings are capable of Buddhahood, and the possibility that it may not take eons and eons, that with a quick encounter, transformation can sometimes occur if we allow it. So I guess I would close then with those thoughts and invite you to, one other thing I want to say about this, and I would be neglectful to not mention it. So some of the misogyny that Shariputra expressed was common at the time, and actually a lot of it exists now here and there, and perhaps quite widely throughout the world. So that's another striking feature of this chapter, is that the Lotus Sutra invites not only elderly male monks to be among the wise, but people of any sex or gender to be capable of wisdom and be among the wise. There is a section of the Vimalakirti Sutra that we studied a while back, where there's a goddess in the room of Vimalakirti who also has a conversation with Shariputra, as it turns out, along the same lines, and the goddess turns into a male and turns Shariputra into a female, and back again. So there's this sort of gender switching thing going on. It defies my imagination to think that this is coincidental. I think very likely one text preceded the other, or there was a third text from which both of these writings relied upon for this encounter with Shariputra. But in any case, and some are disappointed that in both of these situations the female figure had to turn into a male before he was sort of accepted as a thoroughgoing Buddha, that a female body was just not adequate. But one interpretation of all that is that this is skillful means. They're trying to lead people who might have these sexist notions away from them gently, by saying that gender, in fact, is fluid. It's a notion. So we'll stop there with a question about how you interpret this story. It's open to many interpretations, and whether you have, perhaps in a young person or some very unlikely person, been transformed by an encounter, if you can think of such instances, or whether there have been instances where you feel like you perhaps have served the role of one who transforms others. And we can discuss this and see if there are other thoughts about this very odd but interesting story in the Lotus Sutra. Thank you for listening today, and we'll break up into smaller groups and get back together in a few minutes.